Let's pay a visit to Mark's True Crime Corner.
This is not a good neighborhood. I'm scared.
Now, here's your host, Mark Thompson.
The true crime story today is going to be a surprise to me because I don't know exactly what you're talking about, which kind of makes it more exciting. So what do you have?
Oh, good. Well, so many people have sent really great ideas for the segment. And so I'm working on several stories, but the one that I was going to cover today is actually a 3-part series that's on Apple TV, and it's called Hollywood Con Queen. Have you heard of this?
No.
Yeah. So I heard about it on a show, and someone was talking about how they had binged it, and I watched it and thought, wow, this is such an incredible story. And it's so bizarre because the story is about somebody who was impersonating or pretending to be women, female executives in Hollywood who are incredibly influential, whether filmmakers or producers or actors and actresses. And they had built this entire network of sort of cons for people that work as contract help. So photographers, up and coming emerging actors and talent. And it was incredible. The person who conducted this crime started the crime in 2013. And he was arrested by the FBI, or they were arrested by the FBI in 2020. So over 7 years, hundreds of people were conned out of about $2 million.
Wow. What was the con? What was the con? The big con?
Okay. Yes, I will tell you. So if you go to the next visual, so nobody knows who this person is. They are impersonating really important women executives in Hollywood. And they were getting in touch with various contract talent, as I mentioned, through like their IMDb's. And they were asking the contract talent to work on different projects. And most of it felt very like some of the contract work that they would already do. So similar kind of asks, similar kind of contracts that they were signing. But every single one of these projects would take the talent and bring them to Jakarta. And in that, the talent that was going, remember, photographers, cinematographers, editors, actors, they were having to put up some of their own money. So they would fly to Jakarta, they would pay for all the local travel. And all of this was a big network of money that was being taken by this con person, this mastermind, which is probably really generous for this person, because in the end, you know, they're not very sophisticated in this con that they were conducting. But certainly they took advantage of a couple of things, right? They took advantage of a power position. So impersonating these women of power that these contract workers were hoping to work with. They also were intimidating the contract workers, very much like, this is your one big opportunity. This is a huge effort or initiative, whether it's film or television. This is your big break. Using language like that was intimidating and also very leading for that contract talent. And during COVID, actually, is probably when this person was making their most money, because they would have the talent fork over money for like virtual training sessions, like whether it was actors having to get ready for a martial arts role. And they would enroll them with all these different like Zoom training classes, and all that money that these not very well-known actors were paying into was money that was actually going to this con person. But it really, in the end, wasn't about the money for this person. It was about taking advantage of people and the manipulation of people. And ultimately, after conducting this for more than almost 10 years, and hurting hundreds and hundreds of people, the scam amounted to $2 million, which is a lot of money, but not in the sense of some of the larger crimes, right, where you're talking about tens to hundreds of millions of dollars.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I'll walk you through. Now, the person that was conducting this crime was actually found out by a woman that was hired by Amy Pascal. Her name is Nicole Kotsianas, and she was a private investigator. And so Amy Pascal calls Nicole and hires her to figure out who is impersonating her, because people are reporting incidences of this Amy Pascal impersonator calling and fictitiously hiring people. And Nicole finds a person online, and his name is Gavin, and he's living in the UK, and he goes by the handle Pure Bites. So if you go down a couple of visuals, there's some visuals of him as Pure Bites. And so Nicole is on to this guy.
It's so weird.
Yeah. Now, ultimately, how she first figures out who Pure Bites is she starts to look at who is registering the domains of these fictitious sites that people are being driven to, like amypascal.com, right? And that was registered by someone in Thailand. And when she got a hold of him, he said, oh, my friend Gavin asked me to register this because he didn't want to use his credit card. Gavin runs Pure Bites. And then as she's looking at Pure Bites, she's seeing people call Gavin by different names. Hargo and by Gavin and Gabind. And so he had all these different pseudonyms. But ultimately, based on where she thought that he was from and some of the other information that was coming up on social, she was able to get a name, which was Hargo Bind Tahil Rahmani. Yep. And it's crazy because she had actually, Nicole, and this is a photo shoot that the Hargo Bind had done with Paul Hansen. He's a very famous photographer who does a lot of celebrity shoots. And Hargo Bind really wanted to be a celebrity. And so at the time, he's calling himself Gavin. He convinced Paul to do this huge shoot for him so he could get PR for Pure Bites. All the while, he's stealing money from these contract workers. And in fact, never pays Paul for this session, despite getting his information for the wires and making it seem like work was being done to pay Paul for this. And I actually think these photos ended up in a Vanity Fair spread, which was a spread about, the finding the criminal activity of Hargo Bind and not the original intention of the use of these. Yeah. So it starts to unravel. So Nicole figures out who he is through his social, through these domains that are bought. And at the same time that Nicole is working on this, a man named Scott Johnson from The Hollywood Reporter, who's an investigative journalist, there he is getting wind of somebody ripping people off, of somebody impersonating these important women in Hollywood and taking their money. And so he's doing some investigations. And if you go down, he writes an article about what he terms as the con queen of Hollywood, calling this person queen because this person was impersonating the women. Once the story gets published, someone reaches out to Scott and says, I know who this person is. He's been doing this in Jakarta for a long time. So at the same time that Nicole, the private investigator for Amy Pascal, figures out who Hargo Bind is through social, Scott figures out who he is through this information that comes out of Jakarta. So at the same time, they find out who he is. If you're watching, that's a picture of Nicole, and she's holding up a small little diary with a little mermaid on it.
Looks like a little kid's diary.
It is. And the funny part about that and why I'm mentioning it is she was on a phone call with the FBI and she was like looking for something to take notes in. And this was the only thing for her. So the entire case is written out in her daughter's diary.
How funny.
But ultimately, Scott forms a relationship with Hargo Bind and he's on the run and nobody can find him. And Scott watches a Zoom that Hargo Bind is on, and through Google Earth, he figures out where Hargo Bind is based on the city that is behind him in the Zoom. And so Scott, the investigative reporter from the Hollywood, or the investigative journalist from the Hollywood Reporter, goes to where Hargobind is, which was in the UK at the time, and forms a relationship with him. And so, yeah, Tony, if you go down to the last visual, you'll see this is one of these like I don't know what you call them, like FaceTime calls that they were having, where basically Hargobind was talking about all of the crimes that he had perpetrated.
So she didn't represent herself as a reporter. She kind of went undercover to befriend him.
Well, Nicole ultimately was working with the FBI directly as a private investigator. But yes, Scott Johnson kind of went to him and said, you know, I want to be your friend. I am a reporter. He said, I'm writing a book about this. And I think the way that he positioned it as it's a book, I think was very, in my mind, was very much what Hargobind was looking for, which was like pseudo celebrity and kind of a recognition of it. He was Hargobind, who you're looking at right now, if you're watching this, who is the Hollywood con queen. He attributes all of this to a very difficult childhood. That he grew up in a difficult household. He recognized that he was gay at a very early age. That was not something that his parents were supportive of, although I believe he did have a good relationship with his father. He did not with his mother, and he did not with his sisters. And they ended up disowning him because of his malicious and fraudulent activity from a very young age. But he really looks at himself as the victim in all of this, and that he was trying to create relationships with the victims. And he actually victim blames a lot, saying that, you know, nobody was forced to do any of this. And he wasn't in front of them holding a gun, making them do it. But he was in many ways, because it was a manipulation of the death of their career. Yeah. Right. And so in that, he really was forcing their hand. But
it drives me crazy when people, I understand that you come from a tough family, or maybe you didn't feel loved as a child or what have you. But at some point, you have to take responsibility for your own actions. We all grow up and we look back and we go, you know what? What's behind me sucked. But now I have a choice to move forward. So to blame everyone else, I mean, that, you know, that shows the kind of person.
No, exactly. Yeah. And he does that. He does that in every conversation that he has with Scott. And he's arrested by the FBI in Manchester in 2020, and he's been in prison in the UK, or whatever, in jail in the UK from since then. I believe they extradited him to the US. I believe that in 2023 the UK government agreed to extradite him here for crimes obviously that he conducted here. You know, what's crazy is that Nicole, who is the private investigator hired by Amy Pascal, she went to the FBI early and flagged this issue, but she did not have a name. She did not have a name. She did not have Hargobind Tahil Rahmani. She just had hundreds of people being conned out of what at the time was, I think, just over $1 million. And the FBI said, listen, we don't have enough time to do this. Like, we don't have enough bandwidth. I know. And it's not a big enough crime. But when she found the name, they realized that he had been on an FBI watch list for years because he had called in bomb threats to government buildings in the US and to media buildings in the US, like the E building and I believe some of the studios. So in fact, he had been conducting crimes, lying, cheating, intimidating people for years. And so it all sort of came together in 2020. Yeah, it's a crazy story. I say that I thought that the 3-part series was done well. I thought it could have been a 1-part series.
It's a little too long.
Very transparent, yeah. But I did think it was really interesting, and Scott does a really great job about telling the story. So, and
we saw this with this story that you just talked about. And also in a previous story, you mentioned the guy that was finally caught when he ordered prosciutto, right? Yeah. I mean, these elaborate hoaxes go on for years and years and years. And it's shocking to me that no one catches on sooner.
I know, isn't it? And like, you think about the 2 people who caught him, right? It was a private investigator hired by Amy Pascal, and she could have been hired by other executives. She's just the one. Amy Pascal is mentioned in the Apple show, and then a reporter from the Hollywood Reporter, like a journalist from the Hollywood Reporter. It was in fact none of the U.S. government. It was these two people.
No. And if they hadn't have done the legwork and the investigative work, this guy would still be doing what he's doing.
He would still be doing what he's doing, and like I suppose by virtue of like having fewer people that he was scamming and not scamming them for lots and lots of money. I mean, granted, yes, $50,000 is a lot of money. I'm not downplaying that, but
right.
I think that because of that, he was staying under the radar for some time, right? Because from what I understand, he started in about 2013 with this particular con. So yeah, it's really incredible. It is, and you're right. It's about blaming everybody else but himself. And the third part of the series really starts with that. And you know that it's going to be an hour long. Everybody else did stuff to me, and that's why I hurt other people. Right? And a justification of that.
So is he under arrest now? Yes,
he's under arrest. He's in prison, from what I understand. What I couldn't figure out, a better journalist would have come.
No.
But I don't know if they extradited him. Like from what I was reading, it's like, yes, okay, in 2023, in June of 2023, the UK government agreed to send him to the US, but I don't know if he's here. So
if that happened or not. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what the penalty is for that type of scam that goes on for so long. Like how, I mean, I guess you pay, you repay people if you can with whatever money they recover. But at this point, going on for so many years, good luck.
Yeah, it was weird too. Yeah, no, exactly. And there were other things that I'm sort of not bringing up because they are really dark, but there was sexual stuff and other things that he was making people do on Zoom and things. I mean, people were hurt monetarily, threatened, hurt, sexually. It was just like a lot of this. If you unpack it even more than the show does, again, probably relates back to this power play.
In a way, like actors thinking they're auditioning in a way, but doing sexual stuff. Yeah. Ugh.
Exactly.
Creepy.
Mean, yeah. I have to imagine. Yeah. I don't know. It's really
imagine that feeling of power that he had making people do things like puppets.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also pulling the rug from them. Like there's one story of these two photographers, a couple, and they land in Jakarta and they've paid $5,000 for their tickets. And then suddenly invoices just start coming at them for local transportation. So now you're in Jakarta, you're not sure if this is real, you think it's real, and now you have thousands of dollars just being sort of shoved in your face through these invoices.
Whoa.
And now you're kind of wondering how to pay them and if you should, meaning that he would get you to this remote part of the world and then continue to take money from you when you further felt helpless. But yeah, it is a crazy story, and it is a wonderful thing that he is no longer doing this to people. So
yeah. Sayonara, sucker, as we say here on the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. What's sad is like, oh yeah, exactly. No, but what's sad is he probably got what he wanted, right? He got a special on Apple.
The notoriety.
Like all these other things that were created about this story and podcast. So, and now the Mark Thompson Show, which really is
the pinnacle, the highlight. Yes. Exactly. When you make it on the Mark Thompson Show, everyone's talking about you. So that's what it is. So. Courtney, you are so awesome. Thank you for coming on this week and bringing us yet another fascinating story of true crime.
True Crime Corner, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.